Hello and welcome to the Badgerloop Altium project setup and kind of getting started and setting up your Altium designer account and profile. We'll actually skip over the actual install of Altium Designer and Git Bash in this tutorial as that documentation is provided. Should be in this README by the time that you go to read this and watch this video. So first thing that we want to do is clone the repository. We will Control-C to copy the repository over here, and then we'll open up Git Bash. So if you do CD, that changes your directory, and then .. means go back a directory. And then we are now on our C drive. And if you don't have a Git folder, I highly recommend mkdir or make directory git, and then kind of use this as your working folder for all of the Git stuff that we're working through. CD git changes your directory into Git, and then we will go git clone Badgerloop hardware. I already have this checked out, so if you don't, it will check it out for you. You shouldn't need any permissions for it. And we will change into our hardware folder. And then we know that we're working in Git in the master branch. We'll cover kind of the Git workflow and how we want to do that later because we're still not entirely sure how we want to set that up for this project. So once you have it checked out, you can go over to hardware and then open up this design workspace. And that error should go away by the time that you check out the repository. Altium, depending on your computer and its specs, Altium can take a little bit of time to load. Yeah, it's not the best if you have like a Chromebook or whatnot. It is like a fully fledged CAD package. While this is going up, if we look quickly at the previous pod repository, pod for Altium, you can feel free to check out this repository and take a look. There's a good number of schematics and resources there. So now we've got Altium open, and then we'll basically just go into, we'll open up one of the older projects just to kind of see what we're trying to do here. Sorry, I got a lot of projects going on. So our folder structure will be a little bit different from year to year, but I'll just open up this board. So what do we want to do, and what is the point of Altium? So the point of Altium is to create schematics, which are basically different like electrical circuits that provide different functions, like say reading in sensors or controlling actuators, and then take all of these kind of discrete circuits and create PCB printed circuit boards from those schematics. So you kind of want a one-to-one relationship between your schematic and your PCB document. And then you can kind of see here while this is loading. So you've got like your different resistors and capacitors that you can kind of place on your board. And then each one of these, little smaller components is that's a capacitor. Like here's a capacitor, here's a capacitor, here's a capacitor, here's that big footprint that's kind of in the middle, that big yellow box. It's basically, the schematic is an abstraction of what the actual hardware looks like. So you can kind of see like you've got your different pins. So like pin 10 on here is a ground. It's probably on a different sheet. But yeah, so it's on a different sheet, but pin 10 would be like a ground here. And then yeah, if you haven't really taken circuit design, like this can look super intimidating, but like it's really just not super intimidating, or we try to make it non-intimidating. We kind of break down the circuit into its different components. You've got like your resistors here, you've got your capacitors here, you've got some inductors, you've got some MOSFETs here, you've got some LEDs here, and then you've got different like ICs or integrated circuits here. You could also have like connectors, connectors and mounting holes and that sort of thing as well. So we're going to just getting into a little bit of setup for kind of starting a new project. So what we want to do, I'll actually close this project and kind of remove it from the design workspace. So we want to make a new project. How do we do that? So there's a little bit of setup that we want to do first. We go to the tools. If you go into your preferences menu, there's a couple things that you want to do on your setup. You want to go like default locations, set up your default document path, library path, and output job paths. That'll just make things a little bit smoother later on. And you can pause now and go and do that. And then you also want to change your new document defaults and make sure you select from file and then select the from the resources templates schematic document right there. You can kind of customize how you want your schematic defaults to be. I'll just page through these if you feel like copying my settings. Most of them are default, but there are some that we want to change later on, but it's probably a little too detailed for this video. So once you do that, then you go File, New Project, and then you can give your project a name. I'll call this Sample Project Castle. Feel free to like follow along as we go. So that will kind of create your sample project. And then just for simplicity and completeness, we will add a new schematic document. We'll add a new PCB document. And we will add our existing libraries. So all of our components, all of our boards will reference the same libraries. So right now we just have resistors and capacitors ported over. But basically, each one of these components has a schematic symbol and then a PCB symbol. The resistor library is pretty beefy, so it can't take a minute to open here. Yep. So then this is kind of where you can customize anything. Like I want to move this over here, whatnot. Usually we wouldn't mess with a file like this, but if you need to move something, make an adjustment. You can make your adjustments here. I'm going to close this without saving. And then one important thing is to link between your schematics and your footprints. So basically, this is kind of the schematic that you would pull in, and then this is the actual footprint that you would have on your board that we kind of saw earlier in the completed project. So then just a couple of like setup things. So what you want to do is jump to kind of an existing project, copy Control A, Control C, and that copies kind of this top level template, and then we'll place this. here. And we'll kind of give this project a name, maybe format it, whatever. Format it however you'd like. Just kind of keep it this format. If you go over to properties, then parameters, you can enter in, customize any of these parameters, like title, top, level. Engineers, basically just anyone who like worked on it. You can have multiple engineers. We might get rid of that. Sheet number 1, revision 1. Right, so you can kind of enter in the metadata that you'd like. Make sure you save it to where you actually want to save it to. So projects should always start off with a top level sheet. This really just more helps for when we're printing off the schematics. Like we don't have to look at the schematic to know exactly, we don't have to look in detail at the schematic to know what's going on. And then we'll go new. We'll do another, like this will be the actual first sheet that has, resistors and capacitors. Just call this a sample. So because we've added in the resistors and capacitor libraries already, we'll have access to those. If you go into your panels folder, or sorry, panels drop-down menu, and go to components, if you don't have that already. A little bit about like navigating. You've got like your panel window down here, which kind of has the different options. So, like I like the Explorer, and you can kind of customize Altium to be whatever you'd like. Manufacturer parts search is always good to have. Messages, so like if you have any reports about your design, you can kind of keep those up and navigate them over here. So we're going to go into components, and then we'll actually select our say resistor library. So here we can see we've got our different resistor values. So Altium has gotten a little bit better in the search. So say I want a 1K 0805 resistor. Do resistor, okay, 0805, and 1K ohm resistor will appear. Might be asking why we don't use like 0805s or we don't use 0402s or 0805 is kind of the default resistor size that we want to use for our boards. And basically we can pull in, you select and drag, kind of update these things for you. Right, so you've got your resistor. If you press the space bar, that rotates it. And then we'll just place a couple of these guys a little bit randomly. This board isn't really doing anything in particular. We'll go over to our capacitor menu. Similarly, if we want, say, a 1 microfarad, 0805. And then say let's just like line these up a little bit. This board again isn't doing anything. So yeah, Altium, you really just kind of have to, download it, play around with it, get comfortable with it. There are so many shortcuts that I could, make like a 3-hour video, but I'm sure no one would want to watch that. So please just play around with the tools, check out the online documentation. One thing that's really nice is if you're like a little particular in like how you're replacing components, kind of lining things up with the grid. Speaking of the grid, if we go to schematics grid, we want to be operating on like a 50 mil snap grid. Mil is a thousandth of an inch. Yeah, so lining things up nicely is usually good. And then, so now we've got some components, but they're not really doing anything. So what we want to do is go place and then wire. So a wire is basically a part of a circuit that is actually an electrical connection between two things. Right, so now, the top of this capacitor will be connected electrically to the top of this resistor. And then you can do a lot of shortcuts, like I just did PW, and then now we're going to connect all of these. You can kind of notice that, so the difference between like this resistor and this resistor is the little ball. The little ball says that it's connected to this guy. Great. So now these are all kind of connected, and then we'll do kind of similarly down here. So there's so much that you can do with like style and formatting and whatnot, but we'll just keep it pretty basic for this, and then we'll go place power port. So then now all of these are tied to ground, and then we'll place if we go to this menu and we click, then we'll say place VCC, that just means like power, and then we'll change that to pos 5 volts, positive 5 volts, place W, and it's there. So the circuit doesn't really do anything, but you can imagine how this can use kind of the basic building blocks of, building full-on schematics, which is kind of fun. So we'll save that. Once you have like a completed schematic, you want to watch out for stuff like this, where your nets kind of overshoot a little bit. Just kind of going quickly through the rest of this, because I have to get going. You can do annotate schematics quietly, update for reference designators. So now you can see that our reference designators have been updated from C question mark to C1, R1, R2, R3. And we'll go ahead and save that. And then now we'll just kind of round this out. We'll go to design, import changes. And then we will save this project as so you need to have your setup name the same as like your project name, and then we'll import components. So hopefully by the time that you're watching this video, we'll have kind of a more filled out library, and you can do more components. Now we've got our components. You can see I'm going to validate your changes. We have all green checks, so that's good. And we will execute our changes. One thing of note is, like, you're going to have a lot of different, you might be getting a lot of different warnings and errors. That's okay. Like, I have my Altium repository fairly tuned so that I don't make a lot of those mistakes. So I'm not sure exactly what errors you might get. So just kind of work through it, try to consult the documentation, and go from there. Or ask a Badgerloop person on how to resolve your issues, because we've probably run into them before. So now you can kind of see you've got our C1, R2, R3, R1, and then you can kind of see these connections that we made. earlier. So if you go place, route, active route. Sorry, not active route, interactive routing. And then you can kind of connect your board together. You want to make sure you go from center to center. Altium, you can set it up to kind of do a part of this for you. All right, so then now we've done a very basic connecting these nets all together. One of the things that might run into while you're doing this, so you can kind of see the design rules kind of in play here, where the slightly whited out section is your different constraints that you have. So like I can't get any closer to this net without it causing an issue. So I'm not going to. Like, if you overlapped 5 volts in ground, then you short circuit. You wouldn't really want to do anything like that, because that would be bad. There are a ton of design rules. There's a ton of different things that you can do. Like say if I wanted to place a polygon pour, instead of drawing a net, you could draw a polygon. And then go to your properties, tie that to your ground net. Say if you can change some settings. Apply. Here we go. So you can do things like this might be for thermal properties or whatnot. Can make different polygons. Let's take a look at this in the 3D view. So obviously not a whole lot going on this board. But yeah, we've got our components going on here. You can look at it from the side or whatever. You can export these as step files or that sort of thing if you're interested. And we'll jump back using, you can do 1 or 2 or 3 on your keyboard. That takes you to the different views. Yeah, and so we'll save that. I think that's really it for like a really quick kind of overview of kind of the general workflow and maybe like a good introduction to Altium and kind of how to get set up in a project. One quick thing, if you want to change the board shape, you can go to this board planning mode, view board planning mode, or hit 1 on your keyboard. And then if you do design, you do edit board shape, and then you can edit the board shape from here. Design, edit board shape. And say you want to make something funky. I don't really recommend it, but say if you wanted to have a board that looks like that, well, you could do it. Okay, I think that's all I'll do for now. Apologies for the poor video quality. If you have any questions, hopefully they'll be addressed in another video. Otherwise, yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out the Altium multi-vibrator project. This tutorial is pretty great, and it kind of goes through basically everything that you need to do and explains it much better than I did for actually designing a board. It does get a little deep into the weeds of setting up like rules, but it is pretty thorough and pretty decent. So thanks for watching. Have a good one.